Larry what his name is. We don't know what's caused him to be crazy. But the text says he's a demon-possessed man. And shame on the 21st century church that when we encounter crazy people, we leave them in the very state that we find them in. And the problem that I raise to the church is, how can you be judgmental over somebody that's crazy when you have not been too far removed from a crazy situation? Oh, come on. You've been through some stuff you couldn't tell the pastor about. You've done some stuff that you prayed you didn't get caught up in. And then you come to church and get convenient amnesia like you've always been where you've been. And shame on you, because if the Lord brought you out, he's able to bring the next person out. And you ought to thank God that instead of you getting exposed, the Lord covered. This man is wounded. The Bible says that he's spending his time cutting himself. Wounded, he's wounded. Could it be that he's become wounded because when he went to church, instead of people praying on him, they left him in the same condition? Could it be that he's wounded because of a bad marriage? Could it be that he's wounded because he's lost his source of income? Could it be that he's wounded because instead of the brothers of the church huddling around him, they left him to die? All I know is that this man is wounded. And don't be so judgmental of this man in this text, because the truth of the matter is we can take this man out and put our names there. Because somebody here tonight knows what it's like to be wounded. Wounded because you lost your job. Wounded when you don't know how you're going to pay your bills. Wounded because when you came to church, instead of people helping you, they hurt you. Wounded because instead of people praying for you, they talked about you. Wounded because he left you with the children, didn't know how you were going to make it. Wounded because of a bad relationship in your family. What do? When you become wounded, watch this, not in the world, but in church. What do you do when you come to the place of safety and instead of getting healed, you get cut even deeper? Okay, may I suggest to you, I said to my church last night that even in the United States Army, if a soldier is wounded on the front line of battle, the soldiers will huddle around that soldier and drag him back to safety. But not in the church. You can be wounded and people will step over you. You can be wounded and they will talk about you at the dinner table. But I'm so glad that your wound does not keep you from being a winner. Oh, I feel like preaching tonight because somebody here can testify. I've been wounded, but I still know how to worship. I've been wounded, but I still show up at church. I've been wounded, and I still give because my wounds, if they didn't kill me, they only made me strong. Y'all sit down, let me take my time. I got a long way to go. He's wounded. But not only is he wounded, Reverend, but his wounds cause him to wander. Right here in the text, not as smart as your pastor, I didn't make it up, it's right here in the text. He's spending his time in the graveyard. What kind of man wants to spend time in a graveyard? But when you are wounded, you wander away from your ark of safety. And I know you drove up to church tonight and you walked in, but some of us, our bodies are in church, but your mind is wandering because you've been wounded. And maybe you're not like this man on tonight. Maybe you're not spending your time in a natural cemetery, but your spirit is dead. And you know how I can tell you're wounded? Because when you're wounded, you don't worship like you used to. You come into church with your head hung down. Somebody got to tell you how you're doing. Nobody knows the trouble. I see when you're wounded, you don't come to church like you ought to. Somebody got to call and check on you. And sometimes you ought to thank this, that the truth of the matter is, if most of us will be honest, we wander away from the Lord, but you discover that despite how far you wander, you can never wander out of the heart of God. All right, let me see if I can make it plain. You left the church saying you won't come to the church, and you tried to go to the club, and when you got to the club, you didn't look right holding the glass. When you tried to go to the club, you didn't know the latest dancing. You tried to cuss, you didn't sound right cussing, because despite how far you wander, you can never wander out of the ark. Come here, David. David said, if I take wings and fly to the uttermost part of the world, he's there. If I make my bed in hell, he's there. I think I need to tell you, you might wander away from the church, but you can never wander away from the love of Christ. Watch the text. Watch the text. He's wandering in the graveyard. And while he's wandering, Reverend, the text says he wanders into Jesus. Now I feel like preaching tonight. He is away from everybody else. They have put him, Reverend Speller, out of the city. Sister Pam, they have tried to chain him up. And you do know that's what society will do when they can't control you. They will put you in a maximum security prison when you only had a speeding ticket. Let me talk to mass incarceration. That's why so many of our young African American boys are locked up. It's not because they can't contain them, but it's a sense of control. Watch the text. He tries to wander away from everybody else. And while he's wandering, the text says that Jesus is getting off the boat. And he's in the graveyard cutting himself. And he wanders into Jesus. Now, when I read this, kind of reminds me of some of us who try to act like you got saved on a Sunday morning. Like you woke up with your mind stayed on Jesus. The truth of the matter is, most of us, be honest, the only reason we ended up in church is because Big Mama died, because Cousin Pookie died, and you said to yourself, I don't want to end up like that. And so because you tried to run away from everything else, you ran to church because church was your only option. You tried to drink it out, and after the hangover, it was still there. You tried to smoke it out, and after it came down from your high, it was still there. You slept with Pookie, Ray, and John, and after all of that, it was still there, and you wandered into the church. God, I feel the Holy Ghost in here. But watch the text. He wanders into Jesus. But I gotta show you how awesome God is. He was possessed with a demonic spirit. That the spirit was designed to drive him off the cliff. But in between the cliff and the graveyard, he ran into Jesus. And somebody here tonight can testify that you were on your way off the cliff. You were about to be